That's life.
That's life. That's what all the people say. Riding high in April, shot down in... Oh, honey, I'm sorry about your cactus spooners.
Crooners.
Now, I don't care what they said. You are not demented. You're a picture of mental health.
They were talking about you. I mean, try explaining afterlife therapy to what's junior high kids.
Hey, some people go through life never questioning the norm. But you and I, we're doing something extraordinary with our lives.
No, we aren't doing anything. You're the one who's been packing up my stuff and moving me around the country. I mean, in 2 years, I have been to 9 different schools. I've eaten in 9 different cafeterias. I mean, I can't even remember anyone's name. For once, I would just like to be in one place long enough to make a friend.
Honey.
Hello, Scenesters. Welcome back to our Halloween special. Since it's October, all month we will be doing scary, spooky, or Halloween-themed movies, and today we decided to go back to 1995 and look at the film Casper and talk about its themes of neglect and unmet needs. Here at Psychology in Movies, we love talking about psychological, informative, or motivational concepts and using movies to help explain them. In fact, oftentimes movies are made specifically to convey stories about important concepts. Anyway, since it's October, we decided to review this classic, so let's get into it. So Casper is not super deep or emotional, and that's okay. Parts of it maybe function better because of it, and it even serves our themes to an extent, which I'll get into later. People's reactions tend to be comically over the top. There's literal cartoon characters. And the whole function of cartoons is that they exaggerate human emotion, which tends to be very amusing to children who are still exploring what is appropriate emotional range. Probably the main star of this film, aside from Christina Ricci in the literal sense, are this movie's funny and elaborate set pieces. This movie can't go more than a few minutes without throwing something very visually interesting at you. One of my favorite parts of this movie was a rather elaborate and long set piece scene, and I thought it was funny and engaging enough just on its own, but as I'm watching it I'm wondering, why is this scene in the movie? And it wasn't until a couple of minutes later that something happened involving that same set piece that was hilarious because of how it was set up earlier in the previous sequence. Parts of this movie were a tiny bit darker than I remembered or expected. I almost can't believe they got away with this scene.
What's it like to die? Like being born, only backwards. I remember, I didn't go where I was supposed to go. I just stayed behind.
This movie still holds up pretty well. I'm not saying it's the world's greatest movie, but it's definitely watchable, especially if you remember liking it as a kid. I'm not sure which movie won Best Picture in 1995. Let's look. Oh. Holy shit. Well, Casper's a pretty good movie too. Not sure what's going on with these guys here. I guess they are from New Jersey for some reason. No sense in overthinking it. It's not the deepest part of the movie. Which brings me to our next topics, neglect and unmet needs. Did you know that in certain relationships we take on responsibilities? Then we have a dog, cat, child, or spouse, or even to an extent other relationships like with friends or family. We take on shared responsibilities and are mindful of the welfare and well-being of whoever we are responsible for. With pets, it is crucial we feed them, give them water, but also give them freedom to move about and explore, as well as interact with them and love them. If pets are important, think about how much more important it is to love and care for our children. Children need more than just clothes, food, and a roof. They also need stability, attention, love, support, and reassurance. And when we fail to meet any of those needs, that's called neglect. Unfortunately, after Kat's mother passed away, her father, Dr. Harvey, becomes neglectful while grieving the loss of his wife, as well as pursuing this new career. Neglect is whenever we are not responsible to meet the needs of the people that we need to be there for. Whereas the phrase unmet needs may not refer to a situation where someone is directly responsible, that's kind of what Casper's situation is. Casper does have unmet needs, but there's really no one neglecting him. He's just a ghost, and so he has no friends or relationships. Because Casper has no friends to play with and everyone gets scared away because he's a ghost, Casper is very lonely and has a lot of unmet needs of wanting to laugh and play with friends. Even though Casper is super polite, he's actually a very sad character. I think this movie is a great example of neglect to discuss because Dr. Harvey is not malicious or evil. He's just neglectful. He's not mean or anything like that. Really being neglectful just comes down to being so self-absorbed that we don't see other people's needs. It can simply be a matter of bad priorities, and I'm going to give some tough love and say that fretting and ruminating about things that can't change, like death or breakups, shows bad priorities. And I'm not talking about just missing someone or expressing gratitude over their life. Dr. Harvey has selfishly uprooted his daughter Kat, searching for the ghost of his dead wife. At a certain point where it crosses into absurdity and starts to affect his daughter's life, come on, that's neglect. The other reason we might neglect something is because we feel we're not very good at it, so we kind of avoid it altogether. This is also revealed to be a huge component of why Dr. Harvey is neglectful towards his daughter Kat. He thinks he won't understand how to raise a woman, and so he kind of just avoids it. We must always do our best for the people we're responsible for. The one weakness of this movie, from a character development standpoint, is that it doesn't really show the detrimental effects of neglecting children. In the movie Tangled, for instance, we see a more pronounced effect of that style of parenting. Even though Christina Ricci as Kat basically plays a perfect daughter despite being neglected, she plays a disturbed child so perfectly in like hundreds of other movies. And I think it's because of her upbringing, although that could just be my conjecture.
I had a very chaotic home. My father was a failed cult leader. And so he had all that same sort of like really crazy narcissism that goes along with someone wanting to run a cult. And he was very physically violent. There was never any peace in my house.
And you found peace on set?
Yeah. I knew nothing totally insane was about to happen.
Right.
You know, nobody was gonna like get really mad and pretend they were gonna drive the car into a wall. For me, there was this refuge of emotional safety.
When we ignore our children, whether on accident or on purpose, it can have a lot of negative effects. It can cause them to have low self-esteem and to seek to overachieve to be noticed by anyone. This wanting of approval can cause them to be more vulnerable to peer pressure and being exploited. It can have the opposite effect and make a child very angry and have a lot of contempt and disrespect towards older people, or the gender of the neglectful parent, in this case the male gender. They can be very rebellious or instigating, wanting to get negative attention. If children or even adults feel like they cannot get love, then they will want to be feared instead. Similarly, when people have unmet needs just in general, like loneliness, they can become bitter, or in Casper's specific case, people pleasers. Casper works super hard to leave lasting good impressions, that way people won't abandon him. People with unmet needs have profound fears of abandonment that cause them to put up with a lot of neglect and abuse because they're so used to it. Check out my man Casper getting friend-zoned almost immediately, even though he's the only ghost in verified existence. This is because of how easy and accessible he is. Having unmet needs can cause us to come on really strong, and this can push away certain people. Even healthy ones, but especially people hyper-independent like Kat. That's what I was going to say next. Typically, when a neglected person grows up, they normally are drawn to jobs, relationships, and situations with distant or unappreciative people. In extreme cases, they might end up with someone abusive. And inversely, they will repel very giving or thoughtful people because those relationships will feel smothering to them. It won't have that familiar dynamic to the neglected person of feeling ignored and not knowing whether or not that person truly cares about them. And if I've learned one thing in psychology is that we're often attracted to the familiar before the practical when we lack experience. The problem with having any unmet needs if it goes on long enough is that we might forget what those needs are, and then we really have a difficult time struggling to meet them. We might forget that we need challenge and purpose, get too sucked into distraction and wasting time. If you feel like you're struggling with unmet needs, maybe watch my video about purpose, where I go into Maslow's hierarchy of needs and some steps you can take towards fulfillment. This has been Movie Review Justin here at Psychology and Movies. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, as this helps the channel grow and reach more people. And as always, stay healthy and informed.